Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Dave Percy, and thanks for joining us for our Sunday show. Up first, here, the first graphic is the warning map. I've got the yellow here. That's a flood advisory along the Dalton Highway. That's out until about midnight there. And up here, the flood warning is for along the Dalton Highway as well, out until midnight. So a little more significant action going on there in the red area than down here in the advisory. Up here along the coast, all of that is freezing rain advisories out for tonight for about the entire stretch of the coastline there. And some freezing rain reported today, and that'll continue through tonight. And then over here is a flood warning for the Colville River at Umiat. And actually, either one of those extends into the zone here, the Prudhoe Basin. So it actually has both a freezing rain advisory and a flood warning in that zone up there. But all those for tonight, mainly tonight, some of these flood warnings may expire around midnight or shortly thereafter. Anyway, on to the satellite. Moisture streaming northeastward here. Just brought a little bit of rain today over toward Yakutat in this portion of the cloudiness. 1/4 of an inch fell in the last 24 hours at Cordova, and a little rain, just 1/100 of an inch, so into Valdez. Back here you can see the upper level low pressure area with a pretty enhanced band of clouds there that came across the Alaska Range today. Sliding eastward brought the rain into Cook Inlet. A little bit even heavier rainfall up along the western portions of the Susitna Valley. Talkeetna only had 2/100 of an inch, but some areas had far greater amounts than that, especially Squintna. They carried moderate rain at times today. And then back into and on the western slopes of the Alaska Range there, where it fell both in the form of rain and snow at the higher elevations. And then a band back up into the interior, areas of rain and showers all across this region. In fact, all the way back up along the North Slope and Arctic coast up there, where the winds are still pretty brisk. 15 to 30 miles an hour with a combination of rain, freezing rain, snow, mostly a little less on the rain since all the temperatures were in the upper 20s up there today. But that's good for the freezing rain warning out for tonight. A little bit of a break back here, but not a lot of clearing, just the lower cloud deck, some drizzle fog up along portions of the western Seward Peninsula, possibly back down toward St. Lawrence Island. And you can see this just grazing Kodiak right there. The state airport picked up a little bit of light rain for a short period of time, then it kind of pulled off to the east. So looking pretty good there across Kodiak here currently, and actually through much of the day. Clearing skies mostly on the Pacific side of the peninsula, and then the high pressure right in through here, actually giving a southerly flow there. You can see the shadow of the eastern or the Fox Islands there. On Alaska, seen some sunshine today, and then some of this cloudiness. Adak cleared out. Not too bad over toward Shemya, but IFR in the clouds. Ceiling's 500 feet there. A lot of low stuff here coming over the top of high pressure, coming up this way and then sliding back to the southeast. So a lot of IFR associated with that. Fog, drizzle, maybe a little bit of light rain, and you can see a lot of moisture up there to the north. On the chart today, well, let's move to this one for tonight. Okay, low pressure pulling up into the southern interior there, pushes up to the North Gulf Coast. Actually, this looks like the forecast for last night. And so that came up today, this whole system moving through earlier on. And again, this moisture already streamed up over in toward the Yakutat area, and then another trough back out here to the west, eventually moving inland. And about what was going on today up there along the Arctic coast of the low pressure area, still to the south, higher pressure up over the Arctic, and those east winds, not as strong as yesterday, but still pretty brisk up there for brisk wind advisories. And then Kivalina had a little bit of light snow this afternoon, but the Koyukuk Valley, rain fell there, and again over portions of the interior, over toward Indian Mountain. Bettles carried rain just about in every observation throughout the day today. And again, not too bad here over the southeast coast, especially over the southern areas where temperatures in, I think, a Ketchikan or Annette rose into the mid-60s today. And then for sun today, it did look pretty much like this low coming eastward, bringing the rain into northern Cook Inlet, and actually all the way down to the south as well. Homer picked up about 1/1600ths of an inch in the last 24 hours. Kenai had 1/1300ths, and Anchorage picked up 1/10 of an inch. All of those qualify as a wetting rain, again on top of what fell yesterday, but again heavier amounts back to the west along the Alaska Range there. A little more showery around McGrath today, where after the ½ inch of rain yesterday, they had considerably less today. Bethel picked up about 1/1600ths of an inch of precipitation. And then for Tuesday, tomorrow, showers will be decreasing from west to east, still pretty significant, especially in the morning hours here over the Copper River Basin. And again, the snowfall level's down to about 1,000 feet. But be looking at a little more numerous showers tomorrow than what you see here for the next day. But for Tuesday, we've got a couple of systems. The one coming down over the top of this high actually begins to carve out another upper level low here, and that should keep it mostly cloudy with scattered showers there for northeast Bristol Bay, Kilburg Mountains over to the western Alaska Range, and then back down and along the peninsula there, just some isolated showers. Even Kodiak Island, risk of some showers, and then up over the interior, clearing out here to the western and northern areas, but these showers pretty isolated in the afternoon, only over the mountainous terrain now, so that'll be an improvement from tomorrow, and mostly over the Copper River Basin, maybe a little more than isolated up along the Alaska Range, White Mountain areas up all the way up to the Brooks Range there, maybe widely scattered or possibly scattered, mostly in the afternoon hours. And then the original upper trough here now finally swinging through the Panhandle, morning, midday, so some scattered showers with that, and then drying out with some sunshine possible back along the coastline in the afternoon. Out in the Bering Sea, still some disturbances zipping up the north side of that high pressure area that's holding there near St. Lawrence Island. So otherwise a lot of low clouds, fog, again some moisture in the form of drizzle sliding southeastward, maybe too near Nunivak Island for some IFR there. And then this front finally getting far enough north to bring some rain and an increase in the winds here into the Aleutians all the way across. A 25-knot winds, probably gusts of 32 miles an hour there for the central Aleutians, probably only about 20 knots here for the eastern Aleutians, but increasing chances of light rain and fog across the entire area there. And then it kind of cuts off before you get out to Shimia. And again, this moisture may slip on over to the peninsula, Sand Point area, Cold Bay Falls Pass. That probably won't happen until Tuesday evening. Temperatures upper 40s to mid 50s there over the southeast coast, but again, southern areas were into the mid 60s, otherwise in the 40s here over south central Alaska, 40s to lower 50s, 53 I believe at Yakutat today, and a 51 up at Gulkana. Otherwise, temperatures in the interior mostly in the 40s to 40s and 50s. And again, up along the Arctic coast, gusty east winds, temperatures in the upper 20s there, just about everywhere from Wainwright all the way back to the west, except Kaktovik was edged up to about 30. And 30s to lower 40s here over the northwest part of the state, 37 at Savunga, and lower 40s along the coast. Alaska Peninsula, 40s to lower 50s there. One of the milder areas, Cold Bay at 51. Unalaska was up to 46 earlier, and about the same temperature-wise out to the west. For the lows tonight, upper 20s there along the Arctic coast, mid-30s to lower 40s over the interior, with 40s all the way back to the southwest, and the peninsula, lower 40s, much like today. 40s for the lows tonight here for the southeast coast, and 30s getting down to 32 there at Gulkana. Highs tomorrow recovering back up to near 60 degrees. The Susitna Valley, otherwise Anchorage on down to Homer in the 50s, Kodiak upper 50s, mid to upper 50s up over the interior valleys, and 55 to 60 there along the Panhandle. 30s on the plus side of freezing there for the Arctic coast, and upper 40s to lower 50s here for the Aleutians of the Bering Sea. Flying weather tomorrow, upper level low now pulling down this way. So look for some IFR here right along the coastline from Yakutat in toward Elfin Cove, with marginal VFR north of there into the passes, but staying VFR here to the south, with the marginal conditions staying along or off the coast. And then especially early on, some marginal VFR showing up here from the Talkeetna Mountains, Chugach, all the way up to the Alaska Range, and then improving throughout the late morning and into the afternoon hours, with this area also shifting off to the east. Lots of IFR, that moisture coming down from the northwest there, right across the Nunivak Island, but not quite making it to the Alaska Peninsula, but the marginal VFR will. And Kodiak VFR, much of the Kenai Peninsula tomorrow VFR, and VFR all the way out to Adak, and then you're back into the IFR for the western Aleutians, big area IFR, St. Lawrence Island, again coming down toward the Pribilofs and up along the Arctic coast. Anaktuvik, marginal VFR, either approach, same forecast for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, both go VFR tomorrow, but rainy, lingering marginal VFR possible on the western entrance tomorrow morning, then becoming VFR. And for windy, IFR, Isabel IFR becoming marginal, and actually windy IFR becoming marginal VFR. I think the charts here got all jumbled up on the trip over or something, but for Tanita, IFR becoming marginal, and for Portage, this one looks correct. IFR to start with becoming VFR, especially on the western entrance here. If you get a little pickup of the westerly winds there, this east side will go VFR, take a little longer on the west side, but improving either way all the way through the afternoon. Chilkoot and White occasionally marginal. Freezing levels, the colder air aloft now coming in currently now, and we'll be in about this position late tonight, early tomorrow morning. 2,000 feet, snow levels down to 1,000 feet there, so turning a little white there over the Copper River Basin tonight, and then gradually becoming milder down the Panhandle. Not much of a difference. A little warmer here aloft, that warm air that got pulled back to the west there, kind of hanging there tonight, 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in this area, with the warmer air out over the western Aleutians and Bering Sea, or the warmest air. And for icing threats here, mostly rime icing, areas of isolated to isolated moderate here over the west coast areas down to the Alaska Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island. Mostly mixed icing here over the Copper River Basin areas, a little more unstable type of icing, and into the northern Panhandle. Then a mixture of rime and mixed up over the eastern interior all the way up to the Arctic coast. Upper level wind chart shows high pressure up over the Arctic coast there and the North Slope, but a lot of lower level moisture trapped underneath that. This polar low now sliding eastward into the Panhandle, eventually kicking through again on Tuesday, early Tuesday. But another disturbance right in here will be sliding down in toward Bristol Bay tomorrow night and Tuesday. And at 9,000 feet, low pressure along the North Gulf Coast. And again, northwesterlies there, 35 knots along the coastline. And then you can see the hint of that trough there at 3,000 feet. Wind's pretty light most areas, maybe 25 knots on the western Arctic coast and 25 knots there over the Prince of Wales Island area. But a lot of high pressure here out to the west and to the north, and eventually those will kind of link up later on in the week. And then the wind's picking up again here on the western edge of the high center towards Shemya, 35 knots. Turbulence not too bad, a little bumpy possibly over the Copper River Basin, but mostly off to the east there. Panhandle looking really good, and that area on the Arctic coast should be just about lifted off to the north. And when I return, we'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
A gust of wind, a rise in temperature, a drop in humidity. These changes in the weather might have a little effect on our daily lives, but during a wildfire, they can mean trouble. When unexpected weather changes cause a wildfire to shift directions or become more intense, the consequences can be devastating. Perhaps nobody knows this better than Bob Salee. At 17, he was trained to be a smoke jumper for the U.S. Forest Service, one of the firefighters who parachutes onto the scene of a wildfire. He had no idea that on his very first jump, he would face one of the most infamous firefighting tragedies in U.S. history. A small fire was burning in Man Gulch, a steep valley in the northern Rockies. Bob was one of 15 smoke jumpers sent in to put it out on a very hot, very dry day in 1949.
When we got there, the fire was about 30 or 40 acres burning along the top of the ridge. You could see flames in a few places, but mostly it was just smoke. It didn't look like it was going to be a very tough situation at all.
But without warning, a change in the weather turned a fire that was manageable into a monster. Historians have speculated that a thunderstorm passed over and the updrafts that it generated sent the fire roaring into the gulch. Bob and his team were suddenly facing an enormous and deafening fire.
The fire was probably 50 or 75 yards behind us. It was coming really fast.
With the fire racing toward them, Bob and his friend, Walt Rumsey, desperately looked for a way out. In the smoke and the chaos, somehow they stumbled upon a path which led them up the gulch.
When I got to the top, there was a lot of smoke and a lot of heat, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to make it or not.
But amazingly, Bob and Walt survived. 12 smoke jumpers and a forest ranger were not so fortunate.
I guess we were just the luckiest people alive that day, and the other fellows ran out of luck.
The Man Gulch incident remains one of the most notorious fire weather disasters. But deadly shifts in the weather are still surprising fire crews today. Arizona, June 26, 1990. Firefighters battling the so-called Dude Fire were shocked by unexpected winds. The strong winds sent fire spreading rapidly in all directions. 6 firefighters were fatally trapped in its flames. 4 years later in Colorado, sudden strong gusts struck again, killing 14 firefighters on the South Canyon fire. There was no chance for escape when 200-foot flames blew straight for them. These are the stories that wildland firefighters think of with dread. They show just what can happen when you don't know what the weather around a fire is going to do.
Weather is a key component to fire spread, and the firefighters on the ground are obviously concerned about what the fire is going to do in any particular time.
So today, when a wildfire breaks out, even the most experienced firefighters won't make a move without consulting a key member of their team, the Incident Meteorologist, or IMET. IMETs are the National Weather Service specialists who are the on-the-ground weather experts for firefighters. There are only 63 of them in the country. The IMETs are there because the fire crews don't want to find themselves in the path of a fire while they're trying to fight it.
They're there to watch out for the safety of the crew.
When wildland firefighters are called into action, an IMET is assigned to join them at the fire camp. The IMET sets up a small weather office on the scene and will be on call 24 hours a day as the fire rages. Passing on forecasts to the firefighting team so they can plan their attack.
While it's cool and moist under that.
When the IMETs get up in front of the group to give weather briefings, everyone pays attention.
There's the very real possibility that some of those eyes you look into in the morning shift briefing, if you make the wrong call, they might not be there the next morning.
With lives on the line and time working against them, IMETs have to make some grueling decisions that can mean the ultimate success or failure of a firefighting mission.
The job is a lot like what I would liken to a place kicker on a football team. There are certain times when you have to come out and do exactly what it is you're trained to do and do it exactly right because the game is on the line.
IMET John Saltenberger speaks from experience. He had to step up when he was called to Washington State in 1991. The city of Spokane was surrounded by wildfire.
On the approach into the Spokane airport that evening, I remember looking out the window of the aircraft and seeing fires all over.
Northeastern Washington was under siege by a violent windstorm. 62-mile-per-hour wind gusts had sent an astonishing 92 fires raging into several neighborhoods. More than 100 homes were left in ashes, and one woman died trying to outrun the flames. The community was devastated and terrified by the thought of even more destruction. But to everyone's relief, the winds soon calmed down, and the fires calmed down too. Mark Labhart was the incident commander in charge of the firefighting team.
We were starting to get a handle on the fire. I was starting to feel a lot better until John came up to me and said, "Mark, I need to talk to you."
It was very bad news. John was predicting another windstorm, just as ferocious as the first one.
I think my heart just sank at that point in time.
The winds, if they came as forecasted, would certainly mean new dramatic flare-ups in the fire.
The potential for a major catastrophe was in the making.
At the time, it was only my second year as an incident meteorologist. I didn't want them to think that this was just some rookie crying wolf in the wind. I wanted them to take quite seriously the information that I had.
We were literally making million-dollar decisions on a forecast that was from a person that was fairly new.
But Mark was convinced that John's forecast was right on. He contacted the governor, who declared a state of emergency and authorized the fire team to rush in dozens of extra crews. They would be in position to protect homes if the fires got bad again. And then, everyone waited.
My stomach was turning. I slept very little.
If the winds actually materialized, it was time and money well spent. If the winds didn't materialize as forecasted, then they would look rather foolish.
It was a risk, you bet.
At first, nothing happened. But then, as John had predicted, the winds started picking up, and soon intense fires were being stirred up again by an all-out windstorm. This time, with the extra crews in place, not one more life or home was lost. And John, the rookie incident meteorologist who made the conclusive forecast, was a hero.
There was a lot of high fives for John. There was a lot of pats on the back for John.
When you're able to forecast those things and they take action on it, everybody looks good.
In response to a recent surge in catastrophic wildfires, the National Weather Service, part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has doubled the number of incident meteorologists on staff. IMETs are also trained to go to the scene of other incidents that could need on-site weather information, oil spills, search and rescue missions, or terrorist attacks.
Welcome back. For tomorrow, northwesterlies at about 20 knots on the south coast, and a little more westerly up here to the north. Over the inside waters, west to northwest, 15 or 10 to 20 knots. Southerlies up to 22 knots there for Lynn Canal. And for Tuesday, west to northwest, 15 to as high as 20 knots, mostly from the west there on the south coast, west at about 10 up to the north, and pretty light breezes here over the inside waters. Still could see south or southwest winds maybe up to 20 knots there for the northern areas. And Prince William Sound, westerly winds at about 10, and that pattern will extend all the way back across Cook Inlet. And westerlies everywhere else at about 10 to 15 knots, including Kodiak Island and the North Gulf Coast. For Tuesday, really light wind conditions, variable or westerly, but only 5 to 10 knots just about everywhere, so really laying down here for the next couple of days. For Monday, Bristol Bay, southwest 10, a very light breeze here from Sitkinak to Sand Point. No wind, almost dead calm here for the Alaska Peninsula. Seas running 3 to 4 feet. And then on Tuesday, we'll swing those winds around to the east there, maybe as high as 20 knots in the afternoon there on the Pacific side of the peninsula. But light variable conditions continue here for Bristol Bay. And actually, the variable winds will be shifting up into Bristol Bay and southwest of Kodiak. For the Aleutians, 25-knot winds tomorrow here for the central areas and about 20 knots over the western zone. And then lighter winds, 10 knots back across the Fox Islands. And then for Tuesday, northeasterlies or east northeasterlies, 25 knots for the central Aleutians all the way out to probably Amchitka or Kiska, then easterlies at 20 for the western zone, and east winds about 20 knots for all of the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, southwest winds 10 to 15 knots, and westerlies for the Pribilofs, all light though, right up into the northern Bering Sea. A A little more southerly in the direction for St. Lawrence Island, but running in that 10-knot range. For Tuesday, about the same up in this area, south 10 for the northern Bering Sea. Light variable winds kind of indicates high pressure right in this area with those easterlies to the south, as high as 15 knots for the Pribilofs, coming up a little bit in the afternoon there, but not too much. Very light here into the high pressure area. And for the Arctic coast, still a little brisk on the east side tomorrow, especially early on. 25-knot winds over toward Kaktovik demarcation point, but easterlies coming down to 15 knots. Then taking a turn to the north there along the central coast and about southwest, 10 knots on the west side, maybe 20 knots here in the zone, Cape Lisburne to Point Hope, and south-southwest at about 15 there for the Chukchi Sea. And for Tuesday, southerlies at about 15 knots here. Continue the light south breeze there along the central and western coast, and then it becomes a little more southeasterly. Easterlies at about 20 knots, again in the extreme east end of the coastline. For tonight, low pressure moving eastward now along with the upper level system. So mixed rain or snow levels down to maybe 1,000 feet here into the Copper River Basin. Rain beginning to spread into the northern southeast coast. Showers diminishing back here to the west, but this moisture sliding into the Yukon Delta, especially along the coast, back up and continuing in the Bering Strait. Another batch here slipping on down into the Pribilof Islands. High pressure holding over the Alaska Peninsula. And then tomorrow, showers pretty numerous, especially along the Alaska Range into the Copper River Basin, and kind of showery for the Tanana Valley, but all this beginning to taper off, become a little less continuous, but very showery over the northern Panhandle, and beginning to dry out on Tuesday. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.